Hello gang, Tattooed Biker here with you, and tonight I have 5 true reports of Bigfoot sightings and activity from real viewers just like you. This selection of compelling stories come from Oklahoma, Texas, Kentucky, Wyoming, and Maine. If you're still on the fence about the existence of Sasquatch, then keep watching. These stories may just make you a believer. So grab your boots and let's ride to Bigfoot country. Number 1. Dear TB, this takes place in 1999. 3 of my friends were out hunting near Cody, Wyoming. Me and my friends were more like traditionalists. We try to preserve the style of hunting back to the mountain man style. So we've done a lot of research into clothing and weapon use, all that. Well, we're up there in Cody, Wyoming, at a friend's ranch up there, mule deer hunting in the old traditional style. Well, we're up there, and we had shot a mule deer. We had been there for about 2 weeks. We had pack horses, and were cutting this mule deer up to put it on the pack horses, and then all of a sudden, there was what I thought at the time was this animal coming near us. It was kind of growling and snarling, kind of baring its teeth. I told my friend, let's go with what we got on the horses and just leave the rest. So we went back to our base camp. Later on that night, I heard rustling in the leaves, and I told my friends, well, the bears are trying to get to the meat. Let's move it. And we do. We didn't really notice anything. I got up the next morning and I said, did you notice something odd about that animal yesterday? And they all just kind of said that they hadn't really seen anything like that, but we're really not from this part of the country, so they figured it was something native to the area. So we go out again, scouting for more deer. I later come back, and a friend and I, we came back early. I heard some rustling again, and I said, bears are after the meat again. So let's sneak up on them, real quiet, and see if we can catch it, spook it, and scare it off. So we sneak up to it, and there's this, it looked like a guy in a... Have you ever seen pictures of the Indians or the mountain men with the big buffalo capes around them? It kind of looked like that, but it wasn't not quite. I mean, the hair was long. I was like, what in the world is this? So we all just sat there and we watched it. I now know it was a Bigfoot, but at the time it just didn't register, you know? We're watching it go through our packs and stuff like that. Our packs were the old basket style packs, you know, the basket frame, wood, and metal. Let me tell you, they're killer on the shoulders. Anyway, he's just really intrigued, and I don't know if it was a he or a she, but it was just really curious about our packs. I finally said, hey, I don't like this. Let's just real nonchalantly walk up and see if we can spook it away. So we just start walking like normal, and sure enough, it just runs away and we're left there, confused. Later on that day, we're eating lunch and we notice the same thing is camped across the creek that we're camped at. And I say, hey boys, look at that. And we just sat there and watched it. And it watched us. And it was probably, it seemed like forever, but it was mostly like 30 minutes. I said, I wonder what that is. It acts much too human to be an animal. And we start pondering and talking about it. One guy mentioned a Bigfoot, and we all just kind of laughed about it. Then, it was like the oddest thing. On the last day, we were packing up our meat, and this thing was across the creek again, watching us pack up. And I said, I wonder if that's just someone that's just been left out here, you know? A hermit type. So I laid a hind quarter of one of the deer at the center of the camp and said, let's go. So we acted like we were going. I said, now let's double back and see. The Bigfoot had come across the creek and was eating a little bit of the leg. Then it took it and walked back across the creek and down on over the ridge. It was truly about the weirdest thing that I've ever seen. Signed, Chet. Number 2. Hello, biker. So, this happened about 7 or 8 years ago in the central Maine area, which is very thickly wooded. My dad is a Maine guide, and he isn't someone to believe in anything like this. He's just very rational and a sane person and doesn't jump to conclusions. So anyway, he and 3 other guides were out in training season for bear hunting with dogs. They were running the dogs for a good 2 hours or so. They called the dogs back and decided to try another place that was nearby to one of his bear baits. They let the dogs go and they start running into the woods, but still in eyesight. And all of a sudden, they start acting extremely weird. The dogs start cowering and backing up, of course, which isn't normal for dogs that are trained to hunt big game. The group of hunters have never seen anything. They've never seen any of the dogs ever act like this. They seemed truly scared of what was beyond the tree line, but it got weirder. They see good-sized treetops, about 100 yards in or so. They start shaking, like whatever it was making its way through the thick woods. There was cracking and snapping of trees for a good 20 to 30 seconds before you couldn't see or hear anything anymore. Of course, they thought it could have been a moose making the ruckus, but the trees were massive and were being moved, and that wouldn't explain the dogs acting the way they did. Now, my old man is the smartest person that I've ever met when it come to the Maine woods, and he's been in this particular area his whole life, and a Maine guide for 40 plus years, and he's never seen anything like this, not to mention the others that were there. When everything finally calmed down, they tied up the dogs, and they made their way in. They saw lots of broken branches, and the only tracks they found were going down a semi-steep hill where it was sandy enough to get an imprint of any sort. He said it didn't look like a hoofed animal. There were huge tracks, but hard to make out a full print due to whatever it was sliding down the hill. They talked for a while about it, and one of his friends that was there had a game camera set up nearby, as he was hoping to catch it on film. Unfortunately, when they checked, there was nothing. They must have gone in another direction. Thanks. Signed, Cooper. Number 3. Hello, TB. This is my dad's encounter. We are all into big game hunting in eastern Kentucky with the men of the family. Dad was 20 at the time, Grandpa, Uncle, and a great-uncle. They found some wooded farmland to hunt on, and they would go out there with a small camper with 4 bunk beds the night before. Before daybreak, about 10 till 5, they went out into the woods where they had all had 12-foot deer stands to climb up and hunt on at several different locations. By 9 a.m., nobody had fired a shot, so everybody's walking back to the camp to make breakfast, except for Dad. They all figured that he might have had a doe near his stand and didn't want to scare them away in case a big buck was nearby. The men eat and go back out early the afternoon. After dark, they meet back up for dinner in a campfire, but still no sight or sound from Dad. It's now 11 p.m. and they're getting alarmed that something is wrong. The guys go out and they search for him, fearing that he might have gotten lost in the woods. They found him in his deer stand, scared and just sitting quietly. During his morning hunt, he saw what appeared to be a 9 to 10 foot tall animal, walking on 2 legs covered in brown hair. It walked within 50 yards of him. He had a view of it for almost 2 full minutes. Now, Dad didn't believe in any Bigfoot legend, but he figured he'd be safer hiding up there in that tree than on the ground trying to get out of the woods when that thing might still be in the area. He had just waited in that deer stand for 16 hours until help came, with more guys and more guns. Thanks for reading. Signed, Mike. Number 4. Deer tattooed. I grew up in the swamps of southeastern Oklahoma, below the Kimachi Mountains. in the same swath of swampland that spans all the way down through Arkansas and into Louisiana. We had about 160 acres of cow pasture that ended where the swamp pine forest began. One day after school, my two friends and I were playing in the creek that ran along that tree line. We looked up and we saw a herd of deer coming towards us. They saw us in the creek, but they kept coming. They ran past us once they got close, and we gave chase. 3 young boys kept up with a herd of deer long enough for them to cross the neighbor's fence and into his pasture. Now, this was my first inkling that something weird was going on. The deer, they slowed down, but kept going along the tree line. My two friends crossed the barbed wire fence and gave chase again. I was sort of husky then, so I kind of got stuck in the fence and was left behind. Once I finally got loose and crossed over, I looked up to see my friends far across the field, still chasing after those deer. Then it occurred to me, why aren't those deer going into the forest? I hung out by that fence, and my friends eventually gave up on the deer and began heading back my way. I was just standing there, looking around at things and waiting, and I looked down the tree line again to see my friends' progress, and then I saw a black shape leaning out of the trees between me and my friends. It was there for about 5 full seconds, and then it leaned back into those trees. My adrenaline kicked up immediately. One of my friends, he was over 6 feet already at that age, and he had on a black t-shirt, so for a moment I thought maybe I was seeing him. But then I realized that both of my friends were walking beside each other, much further down the tree line. The next second it occurred to me just how big that black shape was, and that it had been the reason that the deer wouldn't flee into the forest. Whatever it was huge, bigger than the small black bears that would pass through from time to time. It has always haunted me. A year or 2 later, I was walking the trail that circled through our land. Now, our land had a large hill in the center, with a grove of bodark trees bunched together on top. The trail went through the grove, and as I walked through that grove and came around the bend, I came across a dead cow beside the trail with its back to me. Not an out of the ordinary thing on a cattle farm. So I went up to scope it out so I could let my father know what I'd found. There was blood, a lot of it. Blood on the grass and blood pooled beside the cow's throat. The blood was still fresh, still very liquid. And the cow's throat was ripped up. Not like cut, but like pulled apart. Again, my adrenaline kicked off immediately. I ran through all the scenarios of what might have caused this. No wildlife around that area could have done it, except maybe a cougar or a very large bobcat, but the cow's flesh didn't look eaten or cut by teeth and claws. It looked pulled apart, and it was very fresh. Whatever had done it was still around, watching me. Then I could feel it watching me. I grew up fetching duck eggs out of snake ponds and camping by myself out in the woods, and I don't have much fear in nature, but those 2 times tapped into some kind of primal fear that I've never felt before or since. That day, it was the longest walk home of my entire life. Signed, Keith. Number 5. Dear Tattooed Biker, I had a weird experience in the Angelina National Forest in Texas. We were camping at a remote campground in an RV. There were only about 8 camping spots where we were. It was about a mile and a half from the ranger station during New Year's weekend. On Sunday morning, the day that we were scheduled to go home, the RV wouldn't start. Well, we couldn't get a cell reception because of the tall, heavily wooded area, so my significant other told me to walk up to the ranger station to see if we could borrow some tools or see if they knew of a mechanic in the area who worked on RVs. So I took our dog and off we went. About a third of the way there, I got this funny feeling like I was being watched. Then my dog, a pit boxer mix, started growling and sniffing the air. He had all his hackles up, and I heard a couple of huge snaps over in the woods to my left. My dog was now growling like he was about to tear the hell off something. Then there comes this huge, loud roar and a scream from the same direction that I'd heard the branches snapping. It was so loud I could feel it in my chest as I heard it. When that happened, my dog hunkered down and pissed with his tail between his legs. I yelled, "Run, buddy, run!" and we started running. I could still hear the limbs snapping, and my dog tried to hunker down again. So I decided to just scoop him up in a fireman's carry and get the hell out of there. Well, that didn't last but a few yards because, well, he weighs close to 50 pounds and I'm a 50-year-old woman. Thank goodness about that time, here come the Rangers in a pickup. They stopped and I literally threw my dog in the back and told them that I needed help. I tried to explain to them about the wood snapping and the loud roar, but it just seemed to piss them off and they dismissed it. So I just told them that we needed tools. Our RV had broken down and we wanted to leave. So they drove back to the ranger station, loaded up a toolbox, and took us back down to the RV. We finally got the thing started, and I told him about what happened, and I asked him if he had heard anything. He said that he thought he heard something, but he was too busy to pay it much mind. Now, I've been camping all my life. I know what a buck deer or an elk sounds like, and I know what a mountain lion, bobcat, wolf, or a coyote sounds like. And I know what wild hogs sound like, but this sound wasn't any of those. This cry was loud enough to shake the very ground. I've had that dog for 10 years, and I've never seen him that scared of anything, ever. He's chased down raccoons, armadillos, possums, and deer. Even ran an 800-pound steer, and never once backed down. So whatever he smelled and sensed was bad enough to make him hunker down and piss himself. It was all just really weird, and I wanted to share. Thanks. Signed, Miranda. And there it is. 5 true Bigfoot encounter stories. So what did you think about these reports? I'd love to hear your thoughts and theories down in the comments below, but please, keep it respectful to the witnesses. And if you have a brush with the unexplained that, well, you'd like to share, just send your story to the email in the description and your experience may just wind up in a future video. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.